The research ship Harmony's light drifted quietly above the brown and green world of Kepler 442c. Inside the ship, Science Commander Zixtel moved his 4 arms across the control panels. His large black eyes watched the data streaming across the screens. The planet below looked peaceful, but something was wrong. "Commander, we found something," called out Junior Scientist Kavran from across the lab. Her voice carried worry. "The dig site is showing strange energy readings." Zixtel floated over to her station. The Veltar had no legs, moving through the air with natural grace. "Show me," he said. The screen displayed images from the excavation robots working on the planet's surface. For 3 months they had been digging up ancient ruins. The structures were old, older than any civilization the galaxy knew about. The metal was black and seemed to absorb light. "The robots found a chamber," Kavran explained. "But look at this." She pointed to a readout. "The energy levels just spiked. Something down there is waking up." Zixtel felt his stomach drop. Ancient technology was dangerous. Every spacefaring species knew that. Too many expeditions had been lost to things that should have stayed buried. "Pull the robots back," he ordered. "We need to." The screen flashed white. When it cleared, the dig site was gone. In its place was a growing black stain spreading across the ground. The stain moved like liquid, but ate everything it touched. Trees, rocks, even the air itself seemed to disappear into the growing darkness. "Bye." "The void," whispered Kavran. "What is that thing?" Zixtel's training kicked in. He had read about this in classified reports. The descriptions were vague, but terrifying. "It's the hive mind," he said. "The ancient enemy. I thought they were extinct." "Extinct?" Kavrena's voice cracked. "That doesn't look extinct to me." The black stain grew larger. Strange shapes moved within it. Mechanical things that looked like insects but were bigger than ground vehicles. They spread out from the center, consuming everything in their path. The planet's surface began to change, becoming gray and metallic. "How fast is it spreading?" Zixtel asked. Kavran worked at her controls. "At current rate. The entire planet will be consumed in 72 hours, maybe less. Send a message to the Veltar Council. Emergency priority. Tell them, Commander," the ship's pilot Nexvel called from the bridge. "We have a problem. Those things are building something. Some kind of launcher." Zixtel rushed to the bridge. Through the viewing port, he could see the planet's surface changing rapidly. The mechanical swarms were constructing massive structures. Tall spires grew from the ground like metal trees. "They're building spore launchers," he realized. "They're going to spread to other worlds." The first spore shot into space like a bullet, then another. The hive mind wasn't content with just one planet. It wanted to consume everything. "We have to warn everyone," Zixtel said. "Send distress signals to every ship in the sector. Emergency broadcast. Tell them what's happening here." "Working on it," Nexvel replied. His fingers moved quickly over the communication controls. "But our transmitter isn't very powerful. The signal won't reach the core worlds. Send it anyway. Someone has to hear us." The signal went out into space, carrying a desperate message. It spoke of ancient evils awakening, of planets being consumed, of time running short. The message contained their coordinates and a plea for help. Meanwhile, 3 star systems away, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the pilot's seat of his cargo freighter Dakota's Run. The ship was old but reliable, carrying supplies to the outer colonies. Jake was a simple man who liked simple work. He hauled cargo, got paid, and didn't ask questions. His radio crackled to life. At first, he thought it was just static. Then he heard words. Alien words, but his translator worked on them. ... Ancient. Enemy awakened. ... Consuming everything. ... Please help. Coordinates attached. Time running short. ... Double quotes. Jake sat up straight. He had heard distress calls before, but this one sounded different, more desperate. He looked at the coordinates. They were close, maybe a day's travel. Well, damn, he muttered. He wasn't a rescue ship. He was just a cargo hauler. But someone was in trouble. Jake made his decision. He forwarded the signal to Earth Command with a note. Picked up alien distress. Call. Sounds urgent. Coordinates attached. Someone should check this out. He had no idea what he had just started. Back on Harmony's Light, things were getting worse. The hive mind had consumed a quarter of the planet's surface. The mechanical swarms were getting bigger, more organized. They moved with purpose, like parts of a single giant organism. Commander, Kavran said, I'm detecting more spores launching. They're targeting nearby star systems. Zixtel watched the display in horror. Red dots appeared on the star map, showing the trajectory of the spores. Each one carried enough hive mind material to consume an entire world. How long before they reach inhabited systems? He asked. The closest colony world. 18 hours. Maybe 20. Zixtel felt helpless. His ship had no weapons, no way to stop the spreading plague. They were scientists, not warriors. All they could do was watch and hope someone had heard their signal. Keep broadcasting, he ordered. Tell anyone who will listen. The hive mind is back, and it's spreading fast. The signal continued to beam out into space, carrying news of the galaxy's worst nightmare. Ancient evil had awakened, and time was running out. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the message traveled toward Earth, toward a species that had never heard of the hive mind. The Veltar had asked for help. They had no idea what kind of help was coming. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Cameron read Jake Morrison's forwarded message in her office at Fleet Command. Her blood ran cold as she recognized the description. She had seen classified reports about the hive mind, ancient, unstoppable, extinct, or so they had thought. Cameron reached for her emergency communicator. This is Admiral Cameron. Code Black Alert. Mobilize all fleets. We have a situation. The die was cast. Humanity had heard the call for help. Now they would respond in the only way they knew how. With everything they had. Admiral Lisa Cameron stood in the war room deep beneath Fleet Command. The emergency lights bathed everything in red. Around the massive table sat the most powerful military leaders in human space. Each face was grim as they studied the holographic display, showing the Kepler 442c system. Gentlemen, ladies, Cameron began. What we're looking at is the galaxy's worst nightmare come to life. The hive mind has returned. General Pete Barnes, head of the Marine Corps, leaned forward. I thought that was just a story from the old archives. It was real, Cameron replied. 3 million years ago, the hive mind consumed 17 star systems before it vanished. We found traces of them in dead worlds across the galaxy. Self-replicating machines that turn entire planets into more machines. She gestured to display. According to our Zen archaeologists, nothing ever stopped them. They just disappeared. One day, we assumed they went extinct. How long before they spread beyond that system? Asked Fleet Admiral Roy Patterson. The alien distress call says 72 hours for total planetary consumption. But they're already launching spores toward other worlds. First colony world gets hit in 18 hours. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Once the hive mind got a foothold on multiple worlds, stopping them would become impossible. General Barnes stood up. Then we don't give them 18 hours. We stop them now. With what? Asked Admiral Sarah Collins from Naval Intelligence. Our nearest battle group is 2 days away. By the time we get there, it'll be too late. Cameron smiled grimly. Not if we send everything. She pressed a button on the table. The holographic display changed, showing fleet positions across human space. Red dots marked hundreds of ships. I'm calling up every available vessel, Cameron announced. Battle fleets, patrol squadrons, training ships, even the museum pieces. If it can fly and fight, it goes. That's our entire military, whispered Admiral Patterson. You're talking about leaving Earth defenseless. Earth won't matter. If the hive mind spreads, Cameron shot back. This isn't about one alien research ship. This is about stopping a plague that could consume the galaxy. She began reading from her tablet. First Battle Fleet, Second Battle Fleet, Third Battle Fleet, all carrier groups. Every Marine division. The orbital defense platforms. The planet. Killers. General Barnes grinned. Now you're talking my language. How many ships total? Asked Admiral Collins. Cameron did quick math. 847 warships. 156 troop transports. 89 orbital bombardment platforms. 23 full carrier groups with fighter squadrons. And the secret weapons, everything. The antimatter torpedoes, the quantum disruptors. The experimental stuff from the black sites. Cameron paused. Even the Ragnarok. The room went quiet. The Ragnarok was humanity's most classified weapon. Most of the people in the room had never seen it. They just knew it existed and that it scared the engineers who built it. That's not a rescue mission, said Admiral Patterson. That's total war. Exactly, Cameron replied. The aliens asked for help. We're going to help them by making sure. This threat never spreads beyond one star system. Within hours, the orders went out. Across human space, ships began moving toward assembly points. The response was immediate and overwhelming. At Luna Station, Captain Amy Torres received her orders. Aboard the destroyer Wolfpack. Her ship would lead the advance force. All hands prepare for emergency deployment, she announced over the intercom. We're going to war. The crew moved quickly. Weapons were armed. Armor was sealed. The ship's combat systems came online. Torres had fought pirates and raiders before, but this felt different. This felt like the beginning of something huge. At Mars Naval Yard, the massive dreadnought Iron Thunder prepared to launch. Captain Dan Miller watched as loading crews packed the ship with enough firepower to level a continent. His ship carried the new plasma cannons that could melt through a mountain. Sir, his weapons officer said, we're loaded with enough ammunition to fight for 6 months. Good, Miller replied. We might need it. On Earth, the Marine Corps was mobilizing. Sergeant Nick Phillips loaded his gear into a transport ship. Around him, thousands of other Marines did the same. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. What are we fighting? Asked Private Tommy Clark, a young Marine on his first deployment. Something that eats planets, Phillips replied. Something that turns worlds into machines. Can we stop it? Phillips looked at the massive fleet assembling in orbit. Ships as far as the eye could see. Kid, we're about to find out what happens when you mess with humanity's neighbors. The fleet continued to grow. Ships arrived from every corner of human space. Old vessels came out of mothballs. New ships rolled off production lines. The military academies sent their training fleets. Even civilian ships volunteered, loaded with supplies and volunteers. Dr. Alan Scott, the military's top xenobiologist, studied the data from the alien distress call. He was aboard the command ship, preparing for humanity's first contact with the hive mind. What are we dealing with? Asked Admiral Cameron. Pure consumption, Scott replied. They don't negotiate. They don't surrender. They just eat everything and make more of themselves. It's like a mechanical virus. Weaknesses? Unknown. The archives from 3 million years ago don't say how they disappeared. Just that they did. Then we'll figure it out, Cameron said. The hard way. The first ships began jumping to hyperspace. Captain Torres and the Wolfpack led the advance force, racing toward the Kepler 442c system. Behind them, the main fleet prepared to follow. On the bridge of the command ship, Admiral Cameron watched the fleet deployment. Ship after ship vanished into hyperspace, carrying humanity's answer to the hive mind threat. "Ma'am," her aide said, "the alien ship is still broadcasting. They're asking if anyone received their distress call." Cameron smiled. "Send them a reply. Tell them help is coming." "What should we tell them about the size of the fleet?" "Tell them the truth. We're sending everything." The aide looked confused. "Everything, every ship, every weapon, every soldier. When humans decide to help, we don't do it halfway." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity's largest military force toward an enemy that had once consumed star systems. The Veltar had asked for help. They were about to learn what help looked like when it came from a species that had turned warfare into an art form. In space, the message traveled back toward the Harmony's light. Soon, the desperate aliens would know that their call had been heard. Help was coming, but it wasn't coming alone. Commander Zixtel watched the planet die from the bridge of Harmony's light. Half of Kepler 442c was now gray metal. The hive mind had consumed forests, mountains, and oceans. Everything organic was gone, replaced by endless mechanical structures. "The spore launchers are firing faster," reported Kavren. 20 launches in the last hour. They're targeting everything within 50 light years. Any response to our distress calls?" Zixtel asked. "Nothing from the Veltar Council. They're too far away. But I did get a message from someone called Earth Command. They said help is coming." Zixtel felt a tiny spark of hope. "How many ships?" "They didn't say, just that help is coming." The hope faded. 1 or 2 ships couldn't stop the hive mind. Nothing could stop them once they started spreading. The ancient enemy had consumed entire civilizations before. A few rescue ships would just become more material for the machines to process. "Commander," Nexval shouted from the pilot station. "Something's happening. I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching the system." Zixtel moved to the sensor station. The displays showed strange readings at the edge of the star system. Space itself seemed to be bending. "What is that?" Kavren asked. Before anyone could answer, space tore open. A ship appeared, dropping out of hyperspace in a flash of light, then another, then 10 more. "They're big," whispered Nexval. "Bigger than our colony ships." The ships kept coming. 50, 100, 200. Each one was a massive warship bristling with weapons. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out across the system like a steel net. "How many are there?" Zixtel asked. "I've stopped counting," Nexval replied. "The sensors can't process them all at once." More ships appeared. These were different. Huge flat vessels that looked like flying cities. Fighter craft swarmed around them like angry insects. Behind them came ships so large they blotted out the stars. "This is impossible," Kavren said. "No species has this many warships." A new voice spoke over their communication system. It was deep and calm, speaking in perfect Veltar through a translator. "Alien vessel Harmony's Light. This is Captain Amy Torres of the human destroyer Wolfpack. We received your distress call. Are you in immediate danger?" Zixtel grabbed the communicator. "Human ship, yes, we are in great danger. The ancient enemy has awakened. They're consuming the planet and launching spores toward other worlds." "Understood. We see the threat. Stay clear of the planet. We're going to deal with this." "Wait," Zixtel called. "How many ships do you have? The hive mind is very dangerous. You need to evacuate, not fight." There was a pause. Then Captain Torres replied, "We brought enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to make sure this never happens again." The human fleet moved toward the planet. Zixtel watched in amazement as more ships continued to arrive. The space around Kepler 442c filled with warships. He had never seen so many vessels in one place. "They're not just here to rescue us," he realized. "They're here to fight." The first human ship approached the planet. It was smaller than the others, but it moved with deadly grace. Suddenly, bright lights erupted from its hull. Beams of energy lanced down toward the planet's surface. Where the beams hit, the hive mind structures exploded. Massive mechanical complexes that had taken hours to build vanished in seconds. The planet's gray surface was scarred with burning craters. "By the void," Cavern whispered. "Their weapons are incredible." More ships opened fire. The planet's surface became a carpet of explosions. The hive mind's spore launchers, built from consumed mountains, crumbled under the assault, but the machines fought back. Swarms of mechanical creatures launched themselves into space, heading for the human ships. Each creature was the size of a fighter craft, with razor-sharp edges and self-repair systems. The human response was immediate. Smaller ships moved to intercept the swarms. These were fighters, but they were nothing like the Veltar had ever seen. They moved impossibly fast, their weapons cutting through the mechanical creatures like a hot knife through soft metal. "Those aren't just fighters," Nexville observed. "They're using them like guided missiles." Lieutenant Colonel Ben Hayes watched the battle from his dropship. Around him, 500 Marines checked their weapons and armor. They were the first wave of ground troops, heading directly into the heart of the hive mind. "Listen up," Hayes announced over the comm. "We're going down there to make sure nothing survives. These machines have been asleep for 3 million years. We're going to put them back to sleep, permanently." The dropship screamed through the planet's atmosphere. Anti-aircraft fire from the hive mind structures filled the sky, but the human ships pushed through. Their armor was too thick, their shields too strong. Hayes's dropship touched down in what used to be a forest. Now it was a maze of mechanical towers and processing plants. The hive mind had turned the trees into raw materials and built a factory complex. "Demolition charges ready," reported Sergeant Nick Phillips. "We can level this entire sector." "Do it," Hayes ordered. Nothing survives. The explosions shook the ground. Hive mind structures collapsed like houses of cards. But more machines emerged from underground, trying to repair the damage and defend their territory. The Marines opened fire with weapons that seemed to come from nightmares. Plasma rifles melted through the mechanical creatures. Quantum disruptors made them simply disappear. Antimatter grenades left craters where hive mind clusters used to be. "These things adapt fast," Phillips observed, watching the machines try to modify themselves to resist the human weapons. "Not fast enough," Hayes replied. "That's the point." In orbit, more human ships continued to arrive. The fleet was now so large it was visible from the planet's surface. Admiral Cameron's command ship took position at the center of the formation. "Status." "Report," she requested. "Planetary bombardment is 70% complete," reported her tactical officer. "Ground forces have secured 6 major processing centers. The hive mind is trying to launch more spores, but our fighters are intercepting them." "Any sign of adaptation?" "They're trying, but we're rotating weapon types every few minutes. They can't keep up with the changes." Commander Zixtel watched the battle from a safe distance. The human fleet had turned the planet into a light show of explosions and energy beams. Wherever the hive mind tried to build something, human weapons tore it down. "I've never seen anything like this," Kavran said. "They're not just fighting the hive mind, they're overwhelming it." A new voice came over the comm system. It was deeper and more authoritative than Captain Torres. "Alien vessel, this is Admiral Lisa Cameron of the human fleet. We're going to be here for a while, making sure every trace of this threat is eliminated. Is your ship damaged? Do you need medical assistance?" "Admiral," Zixtel replied, "we are unharmed but confused. How did you mobilize so many ships so quickly? Our distress call was set less than 2 days ago." "Someone was in trouble," Cameron replied simply. "We responded appropriately." "Appropriately? You brought enough ships To invade the galaxy. We brought enough ships to make sure the galaxy doesn't need to worry about this threat ever again. Zixtel looked at the endless stream of human warships still arriving in the system. He was beginning to understand something important about these humans. They didn't just respond to threats. They eliminated them completely. "Admiral," he said, "we only asked for help." "You got it," Cameron replied. Human style. The battle for Kepler 442c entered its second day. The planet's surface was now a wasteland of craters and twisted metal. The hive mind had lost most of its processing centers, but it was far from defeated. The ancient machines were learning, adapting, fighting back with new tactics. Captain Roy Kim stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Iron Thunder, watching the tactical display. His ship was one of 12 dreadnoughts assigned to orbital bombardment. Each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "the hive mind is building underground. Our surface bombardment isn't reaching the deep structures." Kim nodded. "Then we go deeper. Load the bunker busters, the big ones." "All of them, sir?" "Every single one. I want to crack this planet like an egg." The Iron Thunder's massive guns rotated toward the planet. Each barrel was as long as a city block. When they fired, the ship shuddered from the recoil. The shells punched through the planet's crust like it was paper, detonating deep underground. Explosions erupted from inside the planet. Entire continents shifted as underground hive mind complexes collapsed. But still the machines kept building, kept adapting. On the planet's surface, Colonel Linda Price watched her engineers deploy the latest weapon in humanity's arsenal. They called it the Scorched Earth System. It looked like a simple metal box, but inside was something that made even the engineers nervous. "Are you sure about this?" asked Major Tony Baker, her second in command. "The hive mind uses nanobots to break down matter and rebuild it," Price explained. "So we're giving them nanobots of our own, ones that eat their nanobots. And if our nanobots start eating everything else, they're programmed to self-destruct after 24 hours, probably." Baker stared at her. "Probably? Look, do you want to fight these things with conventional weapons for the next 10 years, or do you want to end this today?" The Scorched Earth devices activated. Invisible clouds of human nanobots spread across the battlefield. Where they encountered hive mind material, the metal structures began to dissolve. The ancient machines tried to adapt, but the human nanobots changed faster than they could keep up. In space, the human fleet continued to grow. Admiral Cameron had lost count of how many ships had arrived. The latest addition was the experimental vessel Ragnarok, a ship so classified that most of the fleet didn't know it existed. Dr. Alan Scott studied the weapon from the observation deck. The Ragnarok didn't look like much, just a long gray cylinder with strange equipment attached, but he knew what it could do. He had helped design it. "How does it work?" asked Commander Zixtel. The Veltar scientist had been transferred to the human command ship for his own safety. "It tears holes in reality," Scott replied simply. "We learned how to weaponize black holes." Zixtel's 4 eyes widened. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone... "We're humans," Scott said with a shrug. "We don't believe in impossible." Down on the planet, the hive mind was getting desperate. The ancient intelligence controlling the swarms realized it was losing. For the first time in 3 million years, it faced an enemy that could match its adaptive abilities. The machines began a new strategy. Instead of trying to consume the planet, they focused on building spore launchers. If they could spread to other worlds, they might survive even if this planet was lost. Sergeant Nick Phillips saw the new construction from his position on a ridge. Massive towers were growing from the ground, reaching toward space. At their tips, dark spheres were forming. "They're trying to launch more spores," he reported over the radio. "Big ones this time." Lieutenant Colonel Ben Hayes studied the tactical display. All units, priority target. Those launchers cannot fire. The Marines moved in with everything they had. Plasma cannons melted the tower bases. Quantum disruptors made sections of the structures vanish. But the towers kept growing, reaching higher into the sky. They're building faster than we can destroy them, Phillips reported. Then we need a bigger hammer, Hayes replied. He opened a channel to the fleet. This is ground team leader. We need orbital support, heavy support. Admiral Cameron received the request on her command ship. She looked at the planet below, now scarred beyond recognition. Half the surface was on fire. The other half was covered in toxic clouds from the weapon exchanges. How much damage can the planet take? She asked her science officer. It's already uninhabitable, the officer replied. The atmosphere is poison. The water is gone. Nothing will ever live there again. Cameron made her decision. All ships, prepare for maximum bombardment. We're going to sterilize this world. The entire human fleet opened fire at once. 800 ships rained destruction on the planet below. Energy beams, particle cannons, antimatter warheads, and weapons that had no names turned the world into a ball of fire. The hive mind spore launchers melted under the assault. The underground complexes collapsed as the planet's crust cracked and shifted. But still the machines fought back, launching desperate attacks at the human fleet. Captain Amy Torres watched from the bridge of the Wolfpack as mechanical swarms tried to reach the human ships. The creatures had adapted again, growing armor that could resist most human weapons. But they were too few and too late. They're learning, her tactical officer observed. Give them another day, and they might develop defenses against our weapons. They're not getting another day, Torres replied. Admiral Cameron, this is Wolfpack. Request permission to deploy the Ragnarok. There was a pause. Then Cameron's voice came back, grim and final. Permission granted. Deploy the Ragnarok. The experimental ship moved toward the planet. Its strange equipment began to hum with power. Reality itself seemed to bend around the vessel as it prepared to fire. Dr. Scott watched from the command ship as the Ragnarok activated its weapon. This is going to hurt, he muttered. The planet? Asked Zixtel. Space itself, the Ragnarok fired. A beam of pure nothingness lanced toward the planet. Where it hit, matter simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized. Gone, a perfect sphere of empty space appeared in the planet's surface, going all the way to the core. The hive mind's remaining structures fell into the hole. The planet's gravity collapsed as its mass disappeared. What was left of Kepler 442c began to break apart, falling into the artificial void. By the ancestors, whispered Zixtel. You destroyed the planet. We sterilized it, Cameron corrected. Nothing could survive that, not even microscopic traces of the hive mind. But the fleet wasn't finished. Admiral Cameron had learned about the spores that had been launched earlier. Each one carried enough hive mind material to start the infection on a new world. All ships, she announced. We have 17 spores to track down. They're heading for inhabited systems. We will intercept and destroy every single one. The human fleet split into hunting groups. Each spore was tracked by multiple ships. There would be no escape, no second chances. The hive mind threat would end here and now. Commander Zixtel watched the human ships disappear into hyperspace, chasing down the last traces of the ancient enemy. In a few hours, the Kepler 442c system had gone from a peaceful research site to a graveyard. Why? He asked Admiral Cameron. Why bring so many ships? Why use such terrible weapons? Cameron looked at the debris that had once been a planet. Because that's what neighbors do, she said. When someone threatens our neighborhood, we make sure they can never do it again. The hunt for the spores began. Humanity would not rest until every trace of the hive mind was eliminated. The ancient enemy had made one fatal mistake. They had threatened a species that had turned warfare into an art form. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you asked humans for help. 3 weeks later, the last hive mind spore was destroyed. Captain Dan Miller watched from the bridge of his ship as the final mechanical pod exploded in the vacuum of space. It had taken 73 human ships to track down the 17 spores, but every single one had been eliminated. "Spore destroyed," Miller reported to Admiral Cameron. "No traces remain." "Confirmed," came the reply from the command ship. "All spores accounted for. The threat is eliminated." The human fleet gathered at the edge of the former Kepler 442c system. Where a planet once existed, there was now only debris and empty space. The Ragnarok had done its work too well. Even the debris was being swept up by the artificial black hole that had consumed the planet's core. Commander Zixtel floated in the observation lounge of the human command ship, watching the cleanup operation. Human vessels moved through the system, scanning for any trace of hive mind technology. They would stay here for months, making sure nothing had survived. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Alan Scott, joining the alien scientist at the window. "Confused." Zixtel replied honestly, "We sent a simple distress call. We expected maybe a few rescue ships. Instead, you brought a fleet large enough to conquer the galaxy. We brought enough to solve the problem," Scott corrected. "That's how humans work. When we decide to help, we don't do it halfway." "But why? We're not even allies." "You didn't know us before this." Scott was quiet for a moment. "Because that's what neighbors do. You were in trouble. We helped." A young human officer approached them. "Commander Zixtel, Admiral Cameron, wants to see you in the briefing room." Zixtel followed the officer through the ship's corridors. The human vessel was massive, bigger than any Veltar colony ship. It was also clearly built for war. Every surface was armored. Every room had emergency battle stations. Admiral Cameron stood at the center of the briefing room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the cleanup operation. She looked tired but satisfied. "Commander," she said, "we need to discuss what happens next. Next, your people. The survivors from your research mission. We're taking you home, but we have some things to work out first." A new hologram appeared, showing the Veltar home system. It was peaceful and green, with orbital cities and garden worlds. "Beautiful," Cameron observed. "Your people live well." "We are a peaceful species," Zixtel said. "We explore, we study, we learn. We don't fight wars." "That's going to be a problem." Zixtel felt confused. "Why?" "Because the galaxy needs to know what happened here. They need to understand what the hive mind was and how close we came to losing everything. But if your people are peaceful, they might not want to hear the whole truth." Admiral Cameron touched a control. The hologram changed to show footage from the battle. Human ships raining fire on the planet. Marines fighting mechanical swarms. The Ragnarok tearing holes in reality. "This is what it took to stop them," Cameron sighed. "Total war. Complete destruction. Most peaceful species don't like to think about this level of violence." "What are you suggesting?" "We're going to escort you home. We're going to meet with your government. And we're going to have a very serious conversation about galactic security." The journey to the Veltar home system took 2 weeks. Zixtel spent the time learning about human culture and military doctrine. What he discovered both fascinated and terrified him. Humans, he learned, had turned warfare into a science. They studied every possible threat and prepared countermeasures. They built weapons that could crack planets and strategies that could defeat entire civilizations. "Why?" he asked Captain Torres during one of their conversations. "Why build such terrible weapons?" "So we never have to use them," she replied. "The best way to win a war is to be so ready for it that no one wants to fight you." "But you did use them, against the hive mind." "Because they couldn't be reasoned with. They couldn't be scared off." They were a virus that had to be cured. When the human fleet arrived at the Veltar home system, it caused quite a stir. The peaceful aliens had never seen warships before. The sight of 800 human vessels appearing in their space sent their government into emergency session. The Veltar Council met with Admiral Cameron on their capital world. The meeting room was beautiful, filled with growing plants and natural light. It was the opposite of human military facilities. "We are grateful for your help," said High Counselor Mevtan. "But we must ask, why did you bring so many ships to our system?" "Because we're not finished," Cameron replied. "We stopped the hive mind, but we need to make sure it never happens again." She activated a portable hologram projector. Images filled the air, showing the battle and its aftermath. "This is what we fought. This is what would have happened to your worlds if we hadn't stopped it." The hive mind doesn't negotiate. It doesn't stop. It just consumes. The Veltar counselors watched in horror as the images showed the planet being devoured. "How do we prevent this from happening again?" asked Counselor Yixvel. "Warning systems," Cameron replied. "Monitoring stations. Rapid response protocols. We're going to set up a network across this sector to watch for any signs of hive mind activity. And if you find something, we respond immediately and with overwhelming force. Just like we did at Kepler 442c. High Counselor Mevtan looked uncomfortable. "We are a peaceful people. We don't maintain military forces." "You don't have to," Cameron said. "We will." The humans established monitoring stations throughout Veltar space. They also left a small fleet at the edge of the system, just in case. The Veltar government signed a mutual defense treaty, making them humanity's first official alien allies. Commander Zixtel was invited to visit Earth. He spent months there, learning about human civilization and writing his report for the Galactic Council. His testimony to the Council would become famous across the galaxy. "We sent a distress call," he told the assembled representatives of dozens of species. "We were 3 scientists on a research ship, facing an ancient threat that could have consumed the galaxy. We asked for help. The council chamber was silent. The humans received our call. Within hours, they mobilized the largest military force in their history. 847 warships, 500,000 soldiers, weapons that could destroy planets. For 3 scientists?" asked the Zephyrian ambassador. "For 3 neighbors," Zixtel corrected. When I asked Admiral Cameron why they brought so much force, she said something I will never forget. He paused, remembering. She said, "Because that's what neighbors do. Someone calls for help, we answer. All of us." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were impressed. Others were terrified. All of them understood that the galaxy had changed. Back on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison received a medal from Fleet Command. The cargo pilot who had forwarded the original distress call was now famous across human space. "Would you do it again?" Admiral Cameron asked during the ceremony. Jake thought about it. "Yeah," he said finally. "Someone needs help, you help them. That's what humans do, even if it means war. Especially if it means war. Because sometimes helping people means making sure the things that hurt them can never hurt anyone else." The human fleet returned to its bases, but the galaxy was never quite the same. Everyone now knew that somewhere out there was a species that didn't just respond to threats. They eliminated them completely. The hive mind was gone, erased so thoroughly that only the memories remained. But those memories served as both warning and promise. Warning to those who might threaten the innocent. Promise to those who needed help. The humans had answered one distress call and changed everything. They had shown the galaxy what help looked like when it came from a species that had turned protection into an art form. The Veltar slept peacefully in their garden worlds, knowing their neighbors were watching. And in the depths of space, human sensors scanned endlessly for threats, ready to respond with everything they had, because that's what neighbors do.